Welcome to this episode of the Lifeguard Project podcast. Today, I interview Zoe Chait, a California State Parks Lifeguard working in Half Moon Bay, California. Zoe is 18 years old, and with just a few years of lifeguarding experience under her belt, she's able to offer a very unique perspective on life. Zoe has had to face many unique challenges in Half Moon Bay. For those of you who don't know, approximately 50 miles of coastline is guarded by sometimes just 2 lifeguards in the winter. Its coastline is characterized by rocks, cliff, wind, and large waves. Oh, and not to mention Mavericks, California, which happens to be her home break. Zoe is currently also chasing the professional surfing career for big waves, and as she refers to it, small waves too. Zoe started as a junior lifeguard and has currently progressed to lifeguarding professionally, along with traveling the world, chasing waves, and competing. Today, Zoe and I talk about her unique perspective from these two worlds and what she thinks about lifeguarding, of course. Zoe also has had the opportunity to do a lot of unique rescues in her area and her hometown, and showcases how important these are to her community, her sense of helping others, and much, much more. Once again, thank you as always for listening. Zoe, first of all, thanks for spending, the next hour or so with me. And for those that don't know, you just got done surfing a contest for like 3-4 days. So
I did.
I appreciate your time, and obviously to getting battered by the wind and the surf today, which you're used to at least by now. But so tell me, where did you grow up? Where were you born? Where did Zoe start her process as a human?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this. I grew up in LA. I was born in UCLA Hospital. I lived there for a while, didn't surf, just kind of was chilling, did a bunch of other sports. And then we moved to Woodside, which is just over the hill from Half Moon Bay. Stayed there for a while and was really into like triathlons. I was big on the swim team. It's kind of what I did. Mm-hmm. I was very into it. Like when I was like 8 or 9, I'd say I was one of the better swimmers in the country. And then I kind of like stopped growing and got not as fast as some of those other girls. And I was like, I kind of want to find something else. So I started doing triathlons, and that's what I did until I moved to Half Moon Bay and got like super hooked on surfing. I was like, surfing is my thing. I absolutely love it. I did it with my brother every day this summer. We moved to Half Moon Bay when I was like 9. And yeah, that's kind of where my love of the ocean began. And I did junior guards, and now I'm a lifeguard.
Which came first, the swimming, the surfing, or the junior guards?
Swimming. Sorry.
Swimming.
Yeah. Swimming. Started when I was so young, just like taking lessons. And I think I joined the competitive swim team when I was 6.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And this was at just like a...
I was on PASA, which is like one of the big club teams where I live.
And then how did you move to, what got you to go up to Half Moon Bay?
We were just renting a house where I first lived in Woodside. And then we decided we wanted to move towards the ocean, and Half Moon Bay was such a beautiful place, and we all just like fell in love with it. We moved there, and my brother and I had both been like on wave storms surfing. We just like did it every day that summer. We thought it was the best thing ever. And so that's what we did. And we both did it for a long time. He doesn't do it as much anymore, but I kind of stuck with it and thought, I really enjoy this. And then lifeguarding came after that too.
Do you remember the first time you stood up on a wave?
I do actually. It was in Hawaii when I was like 4, before I even moved to the ocean. I caught a wave by myself at Lahaina Harbor in Maui. And that was definitely a special moment. I kind of always will remember it. And I remember the person I was taking a lesson with, his name was Bully. And he was this like epic Hawaiian dude. And he was like, "Did you just catch that wave by yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And that's kind of when I figured out I have pretty good balance and enjoy surfing a lot. And then I kind of picked it up a couple years, or like 4 or 5 years after that. And
my first one was in Waikiki, but when you can rent the like soft tops and go in my, like, I forget, someone pushed me into a wave, but it was like, I probably could have stood on that thing in flat water.
Oh yeah.
Cause it's so long and stable.
Massive.
But I remember, my first wave was also in Hawaii. Which thing started the balance of, right? Were you trying to go to swim more or trying to surf more, or what was your like favorite thing at the time when you were first doing those things as a kid? Were you like, I don't want to go to swim practice, I want to surf? Or was it opposite, or was it equally you were stoked on all of that stuff?
That's kind of what started to happen. I kind of felt like a plateau in swimming start to happen. I wasn't getting any faster, and I think it was because I wasn't enjoying it. So I started, every time I would have to go to swim practice, we'd have to drive really far once we moved to Half Moon Bay as well. And I would cry in the car. I'm like, this is not it anymore. I don't like it. The coaches are like, once you get to like 10, especially in a sport like swimming, they need you to commit. So I was like, I like also played soccer. Like I loved doing everything. And so it was pretty hard for me to just like go and swim every day. So started losing the love of that and actually went into triathlons, which was my favorite thing for a long time. So I was like, oh, I can swim, bike, and run. It's really physically challenging. And I like stuff like that. So I enjoyed that till I fell off my bike and decided this isn't happening anymore either. I had a really gnarly fall when I was training. And then I kind of just like by default ended with surfing, but I also just loved it the most too. Like I was the most happy in the water. I felt like I was progressing really fast in surfing. So that was cool to see. Be a part of.
This is a bad fall. Like you got super, I mean, you don't have to talk about it if it's something crazy, but like enough to make you stop doing it, or you had to be out for a certain time, or?
Yeah, I was out not for long. I got 16 stitches in my leg from the pedal of the bike going into my calf. It was bad, but I think the worst thing was the mental. I'm honestly kind of bummed I didn't do it a little bit better. I mentally did a few triathlons after that with my dad on the bike, and he was like, Zoe, you're going like 12, you're not going fast. And I used to be pretty fast on the bike, and I'd win a lot. Actually, I loved triathlons, and I just wasn't finding the joy in it because I was just scared the whole time on the bike. So
that you're going to fall again.
That I was going to fall again. And a couple unfortunate like things happened where like someone fell right in front of me during an event. And I was like, oh shoot, this is bringing me back to when I fell. And it was just so painful. Like, I don't know. It was kind of just mentally, I was done with triathlons. And at that point I was getting into competitive surfing and swimming. I was like, I'm not fast enough to go to the Olympics. And that's like, was my only goal in swimming. So I was like, surfing is my best shot of being a competitive athlete and the thing I have the most fun in.
And where did junior guards come into play? At what point? When did you start doing JGs?
I started JGs the summer I moved to Half Moon Bay. So I think I was 10. And my brother and I did it together. We were in the youngest group in Half Moon Bay, which we call like the Jellies, or you guys call the C's. And we loved it. We like idolized every single one of the lifeguards. Thought it was the coolest thing ever. I remember he was 8 and you're supposed to start at 9, but we lied about his age so he could get in. And he absolutely, like, he fit in, and we both would push each other. And I would try out for this thing called Waterman every single time and like never make it because all the older kids would make it. And I remember it pushed me to be like, I can do this. And I think at the end of my first year, I made Waterman one time. And I was like,
what's Waterman? Forgive me for not knowing.
Oh, so yeah, it might just be a Half Moon Bay thing. But when you're a waterman, you have to do this like extra physical challenge where you compete against all the kids in the camp. And if you get top 10, you get to go into the water and surf or swim or do whatever you want during lunch. And it's like this huge thing. You're like, and you have all these other special privileges. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I'm like, I need to try and beat these like A's and double A's in this event. And I finally did make it I remember my last time I could make it that year. And I was so excited and I was so hooked on lifeguarding. And I think that year too, one of my favorite lifeguards is this lifeguard named Malcolm Fikes. And he sadly passed away, but he gave me the like future lifeguard award at the end of that first year I did junior guards. And I was like, dang, this is so cool. Like he gave me this whole speech. He was like, I got this when I was a junior guard and now I'm a lifeguard. Like, and it kind of really was at that point, I was like, I want to be a lifeguard. Like, even if I'm a pro surfer, I still want to be a lifeguard. Like, this is so cool. Like, you're saving people. You get to hang out with your friends on the beach all day. And you're like in charge of people's lives. And it's at the ocean, which I loved. So that was kind of where my spark for lifeguarding started.
Nice. And so Malcolm was your instructor?
Yeah, Malcolm was my instructor. There were so many instructors that I like looked up to so much that kind of like changed the way, like why I wanted to be a lifeguard. But yeah, Malcolm had always been my favorite. He's an incredible surfer as well. So that like kind of made me like, oh, he's doing both. He was sponsored by Rip Curl. And so I was like, this guy is so cool. And I thought it was the best ever. He gave me that award.
Yeah. And I don't want to dig into it too much, but just for people listening that aren't aware, he had a seizure in the water, right?
Yes.
And ended up drowning that way. Is that correct?
Yeah. He was on PT at this beach called Pomponio in Half Moon Bay. And he had a seizure in the ocean and passed away at like 22, I think. And it was really sad. I definitely I went to his paddle out. It was super, super sad, but it was cool to see how our whole entire community never forgets him. We have his saying was show up and be kind, and all the lifeguards have that on their water bottles, on our trucks, on everything. And so it's cool to see that someone like that who passed away so young, he still has such a big impact on all of our lives. And a lot of the older guards that I guard with were best friends with him. So they kind of keep it going and his vibe alive. So it's really cool.
You mentioned a couple things. So you said he gave a speech and you got the award and that kind of stuff. That was stuff that was sparking your interest for let's call it professional lifeguarding, right? Outside of junior guards.
Yeah.
Is there any other things I guess I'm going down the path of you going from swimming, surfing, junior guards. There's a point where the professional side of it takes hold. Just like you said, hey, with swimming at a certain point, the coaches want you to commit. Well, with lifeguarding too, there's a certain point where, okay, you're no longer playing on the beach and surfing.
Yeah.
Obviously the Malcolm situation brings up some, seriousness of the job and things that can go wrong in the ocean.
For sure.
But what were some things around that time? Was there anything else that sparked that hey, I'm going to do this as a job and go down and do the training and be a professional lifeguard? Because you could have chosen not to, just the bike, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything else that stood out?
Yeah, because it is kind of interesting. Just the bike, there were a lot of times where I would get really nervous in the ocean when I was young. My brother Brody, he was the one who would actually send it harder than me and push me to go out in the bigger waves. And I was always really nervous. There are a few times where I went out to one of our local breaks. I got smoked by a wave and I started crying. I was legit crying in the water, telling some of my older guy friends, you need to get me out of here now. I didn't feel I was such a good swimmer. And I guess one day I was doing this buoy swim. I think it was my second year doing junior guards. Put my head down and did my dolphin dives and was I'm just going to really send it on this one. And I remember there was something in my head that switched where I'm I need to have caution being around the ocean, but I don't need to be this afraid of it. This thing that I can kind of I have the skill to be okay doing all this stuff. And I remember then everything in the ocean just became so much more fun. I started loving big waves. I think also just on the lifeguard thing, I would always think in my first couple years at junior guards, I don't know if I can be a lifeguard here, even though I want to, because I would see one of our beach breaks, Montera, gets really big in the winter. And I'm there's no way I'm swimming out there if anyone gets injured. And I don't want to be that person who's just sitting on the truck. I'm a lifeguard, but I'm not going out there. So once I started getting more confident in the ocean, that kind of sparked oh, I can be a lifeguard. I can be a lifeguard in Half Moon Bay, which is legit and gnarly. And I think especially when I did what we call youth aid when I was 15 or 16, which is where you help out the lifeguards and you're kind of helping with the kids. And they'll in Half Moon Bay, we do a bunch of mock rescues for our youth aids. And so that year, we had a really cool group of kids who are my age who did that job or volunteer work, and they put us through so many mock rescues. And every time I felt I was one of the first people out to the victim, I knew what to do and I felt confident in what I was doing. So I was this is really cool. I love how spur of the moment and how much adrenaline you get from a rescue. So I was okay, I want to do this. That was probably another thing that sparked my inspiration. Cool.
So you kind of were building some confidence. It wasn't a singular event. You're oh, I'm going to be a lifeguard. So the beams came down from the sky and unveiled this thing. It was slowly, from what I'm hearing you explain, is you were gaining some confidence and it started getting fun. You're oh, I want to do this for real.
Yeah.
And then because obviously I was there for your lifeguard training stuff.
Yeah.
But how old were you when you went through? And was it your choice? Hey, I'm going to do this job, or was it were you working other jobs, or what was the context of that? To make money, or just because you're oh, I'll go do it. But you had to put yourself through to go all the way down to Huntington and go through that whole process. So what was that final decision to go through with that?
Yeah. So actually the year before, I think I was youth aid when I was 15. And then when I was 16, I actually did the swim and the lifeguard tryout in Half Moon Bay. and did really well. Like I was super stoked. I got second in the swim. I wanted to be a lifeguard so bad. I'm like, this is epic. Then I figured out I needed a driver's license and I didn't have one yet. So I had gone through all the like gnarly physical training and stuff to do it. And then I couldn't, which honestly, I feel
Did you get an interview too? Or
at that point, once I got out of the water, they're like, hey, Zoe, do you have a driver's license? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, okay, well, you're going to have to wait another year. So I was bummed, but it turned into a blessing, honestly, because I was like, once I started doing the job and actually had a few rescues, I'm like, I don't think I was mentally prepared to do this when I was 16.
Okay.
So I'm happy. I did it when I was 17. I did the swim. I went through the training, and it was honestly really cool because I got to do it with some of my best friends, and we had a great crew of Half Moon Bay guards that year. And I did it for money, to make money, and I also that's a way that I would love to make money. Like I love lifeguarding, obviously, and being by the ocean, getting to surf during your PT. I feel like that was kind of my way of being like, okay, I can still kind of train for surfing while I do this.
Yeah.
And when it's big, we're doing big wave training. We're going out and swimming at huge Montera. And I have people there who want to go out and do that crazy stuff with me, which is so helpful. So yeah, that's kind of why I did it. I needed some money to fund my my surfing career, but also just for the love of it. I was like, I want to go through this training and see what this is all about.
And I did the same thing when I was 15. I went through the whole process, but they didn't tell me after the swim. They told me after the interview.
Oh no.
So I did the whole thing. And I was all nervous, but it ended up being good because then I got, an extra rep for the next year. I knew what to expect, but I was so nervous and going, and no one even called me back because they messed up the paperwork.
Oh, no,
so I totally feel you on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, because we got to talk about surfing a little bit too. So it sounds like there's a point where you're seeing some options with lifeguarding where it's kind of like a cross training for surfing in a way, if I can say it that way, where, okay, I can get paid to surf train on my, PT break, but then you also have people that are there supporting you in pushing some limits when you're trying to get better at lifeguarding. Talk to me about that. Like you're getting more serious about surfing at this time as well, right?
Yeah.
And so where did that kind of relationship happen with surfing and lifeguarding? What were you seeing there?
Yeah. So I definitely, even before training, like right when I was going to go to training, directly after training is this big event called US Champs, which is like the biggest amateur event of the year for anyone from California. It's when everyone who qualified from all around the US comes to lower trestles in San Clemente and compete against each other at lowers for a US title. I was like, before that event, I had so many losses. I had lost all year surfing, and I was like super bummed. And typically I would just like train, like do everything I would do in Half Moon Bay and train so hard before events. And I decided I was going to go to lifeguard training right before and not surf for a week and a half, and just physically and mentally like do things that I've never done before and try and go through this program. And I was like, I haven't been winning anyway. Why don't I try something new? Let's go do the lifeguard training. It honestly, like I know a lot of people say this, but it completely changed my life. I thought it was the coolest and hardest thing I've ever done. I've never been so fit in my life. And I thought it was incredible learning from all those people who were instructors and just pushing myself. Like there were some legit girls and guys at our training that were so strong in the water and running and everything. I was so impressed, and it just pushed me and to push myself more. And once I got to the US Champs, I was like, no one's taking me down. Like I just went through something so legit, and I like just had so much confidence in the world, and I ended up getting one of my better results. I got 4th in the nation. So
rad.
It like worked out for me. And that kind of like is when I was like, oh, I can do both these things. Just through the summer, like working with every single surf lifeguard in Half Moon Bay almost surfs pretty well. And if they're not a big surfer, they're like incredibly fit and will help you in the gym. And so when we're not surfing or lifeguarding together, we're working out. Like when you're not on duty, you're still at the lifeguard office. Like we have a little gym there, and we all just get down and work hard in there. And it's super fun to have this group of guys and girls who are willing to work hard with you. And that's how I figured out, I can do both these things. And they work together pretty well. In lifeguarding, you can create your own schedule. So they work around me having these events. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Before we get too far into it, I want you in your own words to explain what, for those people that are listening that have no idea, and this is some lifeguards included, right? People that have not been to Half Moon Bay. Mm-hmm. Describe to me what, well, not to me, but let's say I was just a random Joe Schmo or someone that's never listened.
Yeah.
What is Half Moon Bay? What does the coastline look like? What happens there?
So Half Moon Bay is pretty crazy. It has like one of the biggest waves in the world, Mavericks, is in our backyard. And when big swells hit Half Moon Bay, it hits super hard. Like it can get 20 feet at our beach breaks. And it's super it's kind of a rugged coastline. Like there's a lot of land that we cover. Like as lifeguards, we cover from Montara State Beach all the way to Pigeon Point Lighthouse, which is 50 miles. And that's pretty different.
And how many lifeguards are on during the day for that?
2. So in the winter, there are 2 lifeguards who can be anywhere in those 50 miles and get a call that's 20 minutes away. And you have to go code 3, which is like lights and sirens in the truck, and go no matter what it is. And not that much stuff happens in Half Moon Bay, but when it does, it's legit. Every call I've been on has been legit. We get kind of gnarly medicals as well, just from all the driving we do. We pull up on things and we're like, oh, here's a traffic accident. We're the first people here. So you got to be ready for anything. And Half Moon Bay just as a whole is like, there's big waves, kind of like rocky areas where it's like hard to get into the ocean if you're trying to do a rescue. And even people who are very capable in the water can get in trouble. So it's kind of different.
And so being from Half Moon Bay, becoming a lifeguard, and then responding to all these things, is it what you thought it was going to be as a lifeguard? Like, did you know, like, oh yeah, people get in car accidents all the time. There's all this stuff that happens in Half Moon Bay because you live there. Or did it change your perspective of Half Moon Bay a little bit once you started looking at it with lifeguard eyes, if you will?
It 100% changed my perspective. I did not think lifeguarding was going to be like that. Just even going to training, like the lifeguarding they do at Huntington is amazing in its own way, but it's so different that like I didn't know what to expect when I came to Half Moon Bay, and I just learned so much. Even on my first week, I was a little overwhelmed. I'm like, oh gosh, like there's all this stuff I'm going to need to do, and it was so different than I thought it was. I like that I wish there were a couple more calls. Like I know you don't want to wish that, but like there's a lot of sitting around. We try our best to just like keep working out and just watch the water, but there are a lot of days where you're just like sitting there and there's no one in the ocean anywhere. So you're like, all right, I'm here, I'm ready, but this is a little boring, but most of the time we have fun. And yeah, it's definitely different than I thought. You're not just sitting in a tower.
Or do you guys have towers up there? Do you sit in the tower? What does it usually look like for those people that aren't familiar with the like a regular day at lifeguarding? What might that look like to someone that doesn't know?
Yeah, so right now it's winter and we have 2 lifeguards on per day. We either have 2 in a truck together who are just lifeguards who are in the truck together, or we have one of our supervisor lifeguards, Micah, has been being on, and then you're in the truck alone, and Micah is like your second lifeguard. Mm-hmm. He's a peace officer. So we either have that going on, or in the summer, we do have 4 towers that open up, and we have 7 guards on those days. We have 2 guards that are for down south tower, and then 1 guard that just drives around, and then pretty much 2 guards per tower. And there are some people on the beaches, but it's pretty slow still. We have some busy days, like this 4th of July was crazy in Half Moon Bay. But yeah, in the summer we have towers open. But besides that, like in the winter, you're just in a truck with one other person and you're in charge of everything that happens.
And what are people mostly coming to Half Moon Bay to do? Like, where are they from? What do they do? What are they trying to do in the ocean? Like, what kind of clientele is it? Clientele being like, you know, your version of the public that's getting into these situations. Yeah, it's a lot of people from what we call over the hill, like Silicon Valley, Menlo Park, even San Francisco. People will come to Half Moon Bay. A lot of people who don't know much about the ocean. They're pretty much just like, oh, the beach. Like, they're just so happy to see the water, but they know nothing about the dangers of what's there. And that's when things go down. Like, I had one call where there were these 3 fishermen who went out on a boat that was pretty much like a collapsible boat that they brought out in like
4 to 5 foot surf and it was like 20-mile-an-hour south winds. And they don't know. They're just like, oh, like this is a great day to go fishing. And we're like, no, it's not. And their motor stopped and they almost drowned. So like there's stuff like that happens all the time just from people not knowing. So that's kind of our clientele, people from places that don't have an ocean or who are just so excited that they're just like not thinking of the dangers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how long would it take the fire department or whoever else? Because there's no other neighboring lifeguard agency. It's just you guys in that 50-mile stretch, right?
Yeah, we have one guard that's stationed who's an aquatic ranger who's stationed at Año Nuevo, which is kind of in between Santa Cruz and Half Moon Bay. So we have that. And then if something really legit goes down in between like Año and what's called Greyhound Rock, will kind of be partnered with Santa Cruz State Guards. I've gone to one call in Davenport. So we will go pretty close to Santa Cruz and sometimes partner with them. But most of the time, yeah, there's no one else.
But this is just the neighboring state park.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. It's
people,
just
right.
us.
So there's no other. Yeah. So then how long does it take the fire department or who else shows up if you have a gnarly call?
If there's a gnarly call, we'll have our rangers show up and supervisors from the state. And then we'll also have both of our fire engines show up most of the time, Engine 41 and Engine 44 in Half Moon Bay. And then just medics, and that'll be kind of it.
And how long does it take them to show up to it? Because you said it's 50 miles, right? So it just depends kind of where you are in that zone.
Yeah, kind of depends where you are in the zone. I think the longest would be Montera maybe. Just because it's like the furthest from a fire station, or San Gregorio is pretty far. Yeah, it just depends. Most of the time, like they're pretty fast, honestly. Like they'll get there within like 5 to 20 minutes, which is a bit of a big gap. So you're in charge for a good amount of time, but yeah, they do get there quick.
Yeah, and then for the gnarlier rescues, there's also, right, like either it's Coast Guard or a helicopter, right? That's basically your next option.
Yeah, Coast Guard will show up in Harbor Patrol. I forgot about them. But yeah, Harbor Patrol has a ski in our harbor, which is nice. Sometimes we'll hop on that ski because our state ski is at Año Nuevo, which is a far drive. We talk to them a lot. They're super helpful. Always down to let us get on the ski and talk through the call with them. Coast Guard as well will bring a helicopter. We had that happen twice already this year or last year. And yeah, everyone kind of works together. Everyone's just thankful that someone else showed up to help them out.
Yeah. And so what about surfing wise? So you were surfing, you're lifeguarding. When did you start surfing? Can I call it bigger waves?
Yeah.
Or what do you want me to refer to it? Because I don't want to, some people, don't want to brag and all that stuff. And I know you're going to be very nice about how you refer to it. But there's objective photos of you on Instagram where you're surfing huge waves, or at least in my opinion, huge. I'm not measuring them, but I can tell you that I wouldn't be paddling out in some of those.
It was pretty big, I would say.
Where did that come into the picture?
Yeah. So when I was living in Half Moon Bay, you're kind of like, everyone always asks you, oh, do you surf Mavericks when you say you're a surfer? And I was always like, no, I'm not going to surf Mavericks. And then all my friends, like Didon, who's another lifeguard, my buddy Jack Sutherland, another lifeguard, and everyone who was kind of a year above me in age, like surfed Mavericks when they were 16. And I did not. And I was like, kind of feeling like, oh, I just need to get out there with my buddies and be a part of this. And so I started training, and I got talking to this woman named Bianca Valenti, who's like kind of my big wave mentor. And she was like, oh, you can totally surf Mavericks. Like, you got this. You got to train and get the right equipment and make sure you're safe and do this is the most important thing if you become a big wave surfer, is to go to BRAG, which is like the big wave risk assessment course. Then we have this thing called the Mavericks Safety Summit, where we all get together with all the first responders, as well as all the athletes and surfers who surf Mavericks, and run through potential calls, potential rescues that could go down. Also work on like rescue techniques if you're not a first responder who works in the ocean, and so that everyone knows how to save someone at Mavericks. So I went through all of those things when I was 16, and towards the end of the winter, there was a pretty good swell.
And so that was before you went to lifeguard training?
I did surf Mavericks before I went to lifeguard training. Yeah, one time.
And did the BRAG course?
Yeah, those were both before. I had done both of those things before lifeguard training. So I had a little bit of medical experience because you learn a lot in those first couple of days. Like you learn about how to apply a tourniquet, how to stop life-threatening bleeds and everything. So CPR. So I had done a little bit, but not much compared to what we do there. But yeah, that year that I did lifeguard training that winter, I surfed Mavericks for the first time and caught one wave. And that was good enough for me that first time. I paddled for 3 hours and finally decided to go on one. And once I did it, I was so hooked. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm going so fast on a wave. And I couldn't believe I made the wave, actually. I was kind of screaming on the wave oh, no way. So yeah, that's kind of when it started.
And where does that, it seems like you've been more consistent with that now just from seeing stuff on Instagram and whatnot. Is that kind of a new focus or what, where does that come into play now where we're at in modern day?
100%. I do split most of my training and time into small wave competitive surfing and big wave surfing, which is tough. There's very different things you do for each. Big wave surfing, you want, especially as a smaller person like me, I do a lot of stuff where it's bracing for impact of big waves landing on my head. So I have my trainer legit hitting me and I ask him to. But yeah, you have to do these crazy things or you're mimicking getting smoked by a 50-footer.
How do you mimic that in the gym? I'm assuming.
Yeah, in the gym. I have this awesome trainer named Raul Castillo and he's an MMA guy and he will just be we'll be doing plank and he'll just come over and start kicking me. And I have to stay up. I'm all right. And it's so legit. And that's kind of what I do for big wave training.
Hey, look, I've been involved in training in multiple different ways, but I did not know that's what happened in the big wave training world.
That's what I've been doing. And I feel like it kind of works. It's great.
Okay.
I mean...
Okay, so impact training, which makes sense, right? There is, you have to learn how to take a fall. You have to learn, you can't just feel the force of a wave for the first time without letting your body be used to taking a hit, for sure.
No, for sure. No, it is kind of funny. I feel like he trained Luca Padua. I don't know if you know who that is, but when he was a kid, he definitely just kind of uses the same techniques with me. And we did that a lot before the winter. And also some pool training I've done, as well as just strength training, lifting weights, because you gotta be strong. You gotta be able to take sometimes if there's chop in the water, it's gonna be a 5-foot chop coming right at you if there's south wind. So you gotta be ready for that, and just your legs have to be super strong to paddle into those waves. You have to be just strong as a whole, and so I do that for big wave training, and then it's a totally different thing for small wave surfing. Is you need to be light and quick. So it's super hard to do both, but it's definitely a focus for me is big wave surfing right now. I just went to Hawaii and surfed Jaws for the first time, as well as put in a lot of time at Waimea, and also did small wave surfing in between those sessions. And I absolutely love big wave surfing. It's another way I get a lot of adrenaline, which I love. And I just love the community as well. And being a lifeguard within big wave surfing is huge. There are gnarly things that go on in almost every big wave session. You need to be able to rescue someone no matter what, because there could be a crazy big set and all the rescue guys are already picking someone up, and you could be in the water and just have to throw someone on your board and get them into the channel. So, I definitely feel more prepared and more like an asset in the water if I'm a lifeguard. Sure. And I've been loving it this year. It's been really cool to kind of put some focus on big wave surfing.
And talk to me about, because you were saying you were initially with the ocean, not scared, but you had a healthy respect for it, right? As you're going through JGs and stuff and you started building this confidence. But then let's use the bike example for triathlons. You're I don't want to necessarily do this again. I don't want to fall or naturally, right? These things happen for anybody when you have I fell on my skateboard before and I'm okay, I will never not wear a helmet again, right? That kind of stuff. Where does that exist for you now? Because you're obviously pushing these limits with bigger wave surfing, which has bigger risks. you also work as a lifeguard, so you've seen certain things and how the ocean can, have these situations that can out of our control, right? You lifeguard or not.
Yeah.
So where does that like healthy fear or pushing the boundaries exist within you right now? And what are your goals with that? Like, where do you see that going?
Yeah, that's always tricky because, like, if you get too confident, like, I feel like that's when you fall. Like, that's what happened to me my second year surfing Mavericks when I was 17 is I had a great session. I got like 5 waves, which was my best ever, like out at Mavs. And then my last wave, my friend called me into it. We were just kind of like chatting, laughing. And I didn't take it that seriously. And I turned and it wasn't that big of a wave. Like it was big. It was at Mavs, but it wasn't like one of the bigger ones I've gotten. And I literally like pop up and I'm like, oh no, like I'm not making the drop. I pin dropped from the top and got so smoked. I was like, oh, this is so legit. That was the first time I fell at Mavs and I was under the water for like 20 seconds and almost got a 2-wave hold down. And that definitely like set me back. Like, thankfully I didn't let it like the bike thing. I was really nervous. I went out 2 or 3 more times that year and was like not surfing well out there. Every time I'd paddle for a wave, I'd second guess that paddle and kind of do like this like half pop up thing and then pop. Like, I was fine. I didn't really fall anymore. But it was definitely scary. And I was like, I need to get over this. So that next year I did a lot more training. And this year I feel like my confidence has gone up, but in a healthy way, I feel like. Because I feel like I can take it, but I know the risks, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not going to do it.
Gauging your limits as well at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I'm not going to try and go on a wave if I know I'm going to fall, or if there's a more than like a 40% chance I'm going to not make the wave, I'm still not going to go. Like, it's not worth it. I have so many more like years of big wave surfing. Like, you can't just send it because you want to prove it to somebody. Also, is what I've kind of figured out. I need to know that I'm doing it for like myself and for the love of the sport, not just for like a clip. Because when I do get a big wave, it does well on Instagram, which is helpful for sponsors and everything. But I can't do it for that. I have to keep reminding myself that like, I'm like, a clip is awesome, but like, it's the feeling and like the whole session as a whole is what like I kind of have told myself this year. And that's definitely helped a lot. Like, it's made me want like, know like, oh, I love this. And I'm not doing this for like the clips or Instagram. I'm doing it for myself. So yeah, it's been good.
And so what is it within yourself that is bringing you to continue doing this and pushing it further? What is it then, if it's not a clip or if it's not that kind of stuff?
I kind of feel like it's honestly like the feeling you get when you like kick out of the into the channel, like on a big wave, or you make like a massive drop. Like, it's just this feeling of like, oh, all this hard work I've done is like paying off in this like moment. That's really cool. And I really enjoy just honestly, like also the community of big wave surfing. Like, I love everyone I surf with and I just love being a part of that as well. And I'm like, yeah, all these people, there's a lot of people out there who've been doing it for years and probably haven't posted one clip on Instagram and they absolutely love it. So I just like, I'm trying to channel their energy. I'm like, what are these guys doing? And like all this stuff. I just love everything about it and the adrenaline. I like the adrenaline high of getting a good wave.
Well, and yeah, you got to pay for the flight and the boards and all that stuff somehow, right? So there's a balance, right? And I feel like nowadays it's changed that all these places are out in the open, if you will, and exist. And there's so much media around it that why not? If this is something you can just utilize to make that continue by having help with a sponsor or something like that, then if you're doing it for the right reasons, then it makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's not bragging about it or doing it, like you said, just for the clip, and then you're risking something unnecessarily. Talk to me about, you're mentioning earlier the community of your lifeguards at Half Moon Bay, working out in the gym at the station on your days off, that kind of stuff. What's it like in the surfing or big wave community that you've experienced so far? And are there similarities and are there differences between that, like the lifeguard world, and then that kind of, should I call it the professional surfing or big wave surfing world? Yeah. Something along those lines?
Yeah. It's kind of different. Like, I feel like the lifeguard crew, like, we're all about like having fun. Like, we'll just hang out together every day, and we do push each other hard in surf sessions and stuff, but we also like can keep it light, and like we do fun surf sessions on like the boogie boards and everything. in surfing, I feel like everything's a little bit more of a like, I guess, professional sort of relationship. But you're also like great friends. Like even in competitive surfing, like I'll travel with this group of girls and my coach and like also guys, and we're all like friends, but we're also just like meeting up for these specific events. So that's kind of different about it. And you surf against each other, which is always interesting as friends.
Yeah.
I had that today. I had a couple of my best friends in a heat, and you're like sitting there silent with these people you've gone on multiple trips around the world with, and it's just this crazy feeling.
Oh, you put on like a stone cold face when you're on the heat? You don't talk to them? Really?
No.
I didn't know that.
No,
okay.
There's no talking going on, if anyone's wondering. No one talks in QS events.
Really?
Yeah.
And I never did. So like, forgive me for my naive approach to this, but I never did perfect. Like when I stand up on a surfboard, I'm good to go like left or right.
Yeah.
I'm not doing airs. I'm not doing crazy stuff. I never went competitive. So I don't know that world too much, but I didn't know that you guys, people that you're going around with, you just won't even say like, look over and say hello. It's just.
No, we'll say like good luck before the heat, and we'll always see each other, like kind of give each other like this nod of like approval. Like, okay, we're about to like do this against each other. And we put so much into these events. Like there's so much travel. Like the girl I was just in an event with came from Costa Rica, and you go all over the world to do these things. Yeah. And so when you're in a heat, like you really want to win. Like you have put a lot into this. So you're very dialed in on what you're doing. And you're like, if I start talking to my friend, or if I kind of think of them as my friend right now, I'm not going to win. So I don't talk to anyone. Some people do a little bit, but there's mainly just you're focused on yourself. And then you get out of the heat, you're all friends again. Like you always, like I try and always say good job, like be kind to everybody, especially because you see them at every event. It's the same group of girls, same group of guys every time. So you know everyone. So you're not going to try and make enemies or anything like that. But it definitely can get tense. Like you're in a house with these girls who are all trying to make it to the Challenger Series, which is like the next round of events that you can get to, and we're all staying in the same house, and we're all in the top 20, and we're like, all right, well, we're all going to show up against each other at some point, and we have to be friendly in the house. Like it's just how it goes. And so it's definitely a different dynamic than at home when I'm just cruising with my buddies. Like we're very much in a professional setting.
Yeah. And I mean, lifeguarding too is obviously a profession. Like you can have fun, but you're professionally, serving the public.
Oh, 100%.
But I never thought of that dynamic of like, you need to get in the zone, you're competing, which makes sense, right? Any sport even on your team, if you end up in, something, you can have competition within that. But I didn't think about that part of it for sure. So you would say that's one of the main differences, like lifeguarding versus, because everyone's dealing with the ocean, right?
Yeah.
The context is just this one, you're waiting for things to happen and serving the public. This one, you're pushing personal limits and other things like that, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, both you have to be like vigilant and ready for whatever happens, because like you could have a heat and it could go flat for 10 minutes, or you could be lifeguarding and it could be, this is what happens in Half Moon Bay, is it could be literally nothing happens for months, and then 3 things happen in the same day, which I've been a part of. And it's very much like you need to keep hold yourself together and be like, okay, I know I have the training for this. I know it's been a minute, but it's just like heat surfing. Like you could be sitting out there for like 15 minutes doing nothing. And then you're like, okay, I know I have the training once this wave does come to do it correctly. It's just like a rescue. I know when I have to do it, I'm ready, and I'll do it well.
Yeah. And which world gives you more towards the other? If I don't know if I'm saying that right, which like skills towards the ocean or perception towards the ocean or reading waves or doing that kind of thing? Like, do you feel at this point that big wave surfing and surf contests is traveling to see different places in the world, or being in Half Moon Bay and responding to real life situations? Like which one feeds the other more, I guess, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of feed into each other. I feel like for me, it's always hard. Like I'll be at one of these events. I was at this event and something very legit happened in Half Moon Bay that was super stressful. And I like it's very weird because
you were at a surf contest in Half Moon Bay?
No, I was here when something this week, and something happened in Half Moon Bay that was very intense. And as a lifeguard working most of the winter, I'm like, I want to be there just with these people I've gone through all this other stuff with. Like, I want to be there to help. And it's definitely, honestly, harder to be away from it. But then I'm like also loving what I'm doing. So they do feed into each other, but they're also like, I don't know, it's very interesting. Like, you want to go on all these surf trips, but then you also want to go and like lifeguard and like make some money and have a real job and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's definitely, they're two different worlds, but there's also a bunch of stuff that's similar about them. Both I absolutely love, and I hope to keep doing both of them.
And what was it that happened this week that you missed? That was the
there was a drowning in Half Moon Bay actually, which was very much our like most legit call this winter for sure. We had a great response from our lifeguards. My friend Elias, he was off duty, and we all get these like notifications on our phone if something like that happens. And everyone was watching football at his house because it was Sunday, and he lives right next to the beach where this happened. And there were 3 guards at his house. They all just hopped in his car. They all had buoy and fins ready to go and went to the drowning and helped the 2 lifeguards who were on duty. So that's kind of what happened. And yeah, it was good to hear about, even though it obviously wasn't a good call. The way that we responded to it was almost as good as it could have gone. And just kind of hearing everyone talk about it and how they were all there for each other, and that's a hard thing to go through. And everyone was there, like, just like, if you guys need anything, like, I'm here to talk. Like, everyone's there for each other. And that's just an awesome environment and something I'm super proud to be a part of, that everyone's there for each other. And the community's very much, it's a great community. So it was cool.
So much so that you feel like, not guilty, but what I'm picking up is you're like, I wish I was there to help them.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, but you were at the contest down here. And
yeah, 100%. I definitely do feel that. Like, you're like, oh, these are these guys that I've been sitting in a truck with for 8 hours, day in and day out. And I want to be there to help them out, or just there for them in some way. Like, even if I didn't go to the call, like after, I just called them and made sure they were all good. They seemed to be doing fine. And yeah, just to have a community like that that really do care, like, is pretty cool.
And I think, just for context of people listening, because I know what you're referring to, but I think it's difficult for people to understand that you were saying everyone gets a notification on their phone, right? Like Pulse Point or something like that. And because you're in the community, which is a generally small community, right? Not in size, maybe geography, but like the people that are around.
Yep.
You know the people that are working that day.
Yeah.
And you know when a call that's legit comes out, whether it's, a larger rescue on a larger surf day or something, and you guys are literally coming in off duty to help each other from your house to do a rescue. Because why? I mean, isn't there, like, there's just not enough help? Or what's the, like, what do you think's that essence of wanting to help in that context?
There's, like, I feel like the 2 guards who were on could have done it themselves. But it's super nice on a big call like that people show up. Like, we do have 2 guards on who can most of the time handle what's going to go down. But it is cool to know, like, you have these other people in the community, even if they're lifeguards who don't work that much anymore and have like other jobs now, they still live in Half Moon Bay and get those notifications, and they're ready to roll. Like, there's a couple of people who just always show up when there's calls, which is honestly epic. Like, you might not be the first one there, and hopefully someone else who has the training will show up, and most of the time they will. And it's kind of a cool feeling. And yeah, you get a lot of off-duty rescues in Half Moon Bay. I think I've had at least 3 that I've been called to. And then I had one in Santa Cruz as well. And then, I'm just always ready. Like, we always have our buoy and fins in the car, and like, it's legit something that could happen to you any day.
What do you think? Where do you think that readiness comes from? Like, not wanting to let your friends down, or did you learn that in training, or like, why would you carry a buoy and fins in your car?
I kind of did learn that in training. Like, I will always remember the day that I was doing, I think we were working on CPR, and we had to run, like, we did the CPR, and then I think someone was talking or something. We did something wrong in training, and we all had to run around this tower. And the girl who I was doing the CPR with and we didn't grab our buoy and fins and med box, and neither did like 10 other people. And I remember we had to do, what is it called? we had to hold our buoy and fins
Oh,
out.
just holding it out until your arms are burning.
Until your arms are burning off in front of everyone, until every single one of us who forgot tied their buoy, like untied and retied the buoy. And it took like 10 minutes and I felt so bad. And then it was just drilled in my memory after that. Like, I'm always going to have my buoy and fins, like not in that much of a way where like it's always going to be right there, but just to have it in my car, like, why not? Like you want to be ready to help your community. And I've also had a few rescues with people I know, which like I always want to be there to help like another surfer or someone who's helped me before. Like,
sure,
that was kind of who it was. And I was on duty and had to help one of my friends who hit his head, who was pretty much one of my mentors from Half Moon Bay. And that was another hard call where you're like helping someone in your community, but I want to be prepared if that happened and I wasn't on duty to like have the stuff I need to help him out. And I think that's where it comes from. I think almost all of us keep our buoy and fins in our car.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now you have the context as to why you were, let's call it, punished at training for forgetting it, right? Like you realize, and especially like once you start going north of basically here, like towards Santa Cruz, Half Moon Bay, Humboldt, Mendocino, those places, the rescues are different. Things happen so quick, right? And you want to have some equipment there with you because you're relying on, maybe your friend that happens to be surfing that break or someone coming in off duty to help you out because there's not as much of a, like down south where there's a tower every 200 yards.
Yeah, every 200 yards. Definitely not like that. And I mean, that's kind of what saved that person when I had a rescue in Pacifica. And I didn't know this at the time, but I had my buoy and fins in the car. And
was this the one that was on the news or whatever? Will you, because I wanted to ask you about that one regardless, will you just take me from the beginning to end on how that went down?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was surfing in Pacifica. There was a really good bar at what we call the Pump House, which is in the middle of the beach. And it was like 30 mile an hour south wind, or it was like southeast wind, which is offshore at Lindemar. So that's why I was there. Nowhere else was good with that wind. And it was pretty big. It was probably like 4 to 5 foot, but like solid. There were some solid sets and it was kind of barreling. I was having fun surfing. And I surfed for probably like 15 minutes. Like all these, like every guy out there were like legit guys who know how to surf and know what they're doing. And we were surfing and I kind of look over and I see like this fire truck with their sirens on in the south parking lot. As well as like, then like an ambulance pulled up and I'm like, oh, maybe it's just like a traffic accident. There's like a big intersection there as well. Like the beach is right next to the road. I'm like, oh, maybe there's a traffic accident. Like I don't see anything going on in the water. Like wonder what this is. But I had like a weird feeling. I couldn't really surf. Like I was not doing well after I saw that. And then I ended up getting a wave and it was like a closeout, but I went in and I was like, these trucks are facing the ocean. Like there might be something going wrong like right now. And so I run up to my mom who was actually there filming me because like as a competitive surfer, I need clips. So thankfully my mom came and filmed me. So she was there and she was like, Zoe, what is that out in the water? And I'm like, I didn't even look, but I knew it was a water rescue. I'm like, I'm going to go deal with this. I said to her and I sprinted to my car. I'm like, there's something going on. I can just tell. And so I sprinted to my car, which was in this middle parking lot. And then all the first responders were in the further south parking lot. So I grabbed my phone, which was in the back of my truck, and looked, and I saw Pulse Point Water Rescue Pacifica. And I'm like, okay, so I throw my phone down and throw my board in the car.
So let me interrupt you just for 1 second.
Yeah.
Because I just want to say that's a pretty valuable thing, right? Like, because did any of the other surfers get out or worry why there's a fire truck?
No, we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, oh, I wonder what that is. And I'm like, this could be bad. What it is. Yeah, I know what this is. The
and
way
you had the training. And not just that, you chose to go investigate and to stop surfing even though it's pumping.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's where the difference between surfing and lifeguarding exists, right? If someone's just surfing and it's going off, they're not thinking about anything else. Here you are with this like almost infectious perspective where you're like, okay, there's a fire truck, there's stuff. You're starting to change your awareness and you're like transforming into lifeguard mode, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So keep going. I just wanted to like contextualize that for people listening.
Yeah, that is kind of what I thought. And I was like, oh, no one else is taking this very seriously right now, but it could be bad. Like it's pretty gnarly right now. Like there's a lot of wind, some swell. There could be Pacifica is normally a wave that people go to who don't really know how to surf. It's normally not that good, and it's normally pretty safe. So I was like, there could be someone who kind of was out of their comfort zone today. And so I grabbed my buoy and fins were in the back of my truck after I saw the pulse point notification. I also knew who was on duty that day. It was my friend Elias. So I tried really quick to call him as I was grabbing my stuff. He didn't answer. So I was like, all right, well, we're just going to do this. Like, he's probably going code 3 here right now. So that's what I thought. And so I sprinted to the other parking lot, which is like maybe 200 yards away. And I went up to them and I was like, okay, this is when the only other lifeguard woman who works in the winter her name is Riley Rhodes. And she had a really gnarly rescue a couple years back. And she's like one of my big role models. And I really like listening to advice from her. And I remember this thought came into my head as I was running there by myself, 5'3" me. I'm like, okay, I need to know. Like, she told me if it's something in the water, even if these people are like, they're firefighters, like whatever, they're cool, they're intimidating, whatever. But if it's in the water, this is your call. So she like tells me, like, you really need to just like remind that, like say that in your head and be like, I know what to do the most right here. And they want me to help. So I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I can just go talk to them. And so I was like, hey, I'm an off-duty lifeguard. What's going on? And then,
was this the first time you had like that kind of an interaction with them, or has this happened before? Or you said you had a few other off-duty ones, but
I've had a couple other off-duty ones, but none where the fire was there
stuff.
And none where I was alone. Like,
so you're like talking yourself up to show up by yourself to be like, none of you guys are going in the water, and I'm here.
I'm here and I'm ready to go in the water. Like,
you've got just a random buoy and fins with you.
Yeah, I got buoy and fins. Yeah, they're like, I can't believe they like believe me. I'm so stoked. It did say Half Moon Bay State Guard, but like, I don't know. I could have been from anywhere. Like,
so you're hyping yourself up as you're going. Okay,
I'm running.
Continue. I just want to contextualize this, like, so people listening can like, because I know you. I know. I can picture the thing, but I want to just keep bringing in awareness to it. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. I was hyping myself up. I'm like, I know I can do this. And I was like, what's going on? And they gave me their binoculars. They're like, do you see that little dot in the middle of the ocean? And I'm like, I do. Yep, I see that. And there's this guy trying to paddle. He had a surfboard, which was good. It made me a little bit more like not freaking out. And we kind of had more time to make a plan because he had a flotation device. Mm-hmm. So that was good. But he was far out. Like, I was like, how did he even get out there? And I guess he just got pushed by the wind. The wind was really strong. And so he got pushed by the wind and the current was going north. So he was getting pushed north where the waves get bigger. And then there's a cliff where it goes to this other wave called Rockaway. And that wave, when it's bigger, can get very big rip currents and you could get swept out so far. So I was like, okay, this is kind of, we got to start going, but this guy's in the middle of the bay. He's not close to going to that other side of the cliff, but he's going to keep going further and further out the longer this takes. Mm-hmm. So like, I kind of talked with the firefighters and they were like, are you sure you got this? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, did you have any, have you talked with any of the other lifeguards from Half Moon Bay? They should be coming. And they said no. And I was like, okay, well, it'll be fine. I think I got it. I've been swimming since I was like 6 and this is something I've practiced and trained for. And so I felt really confident going in. And so they kind of just said, oh, we'll help kind of direct you to the victim if you can't see because it was pretty windy. And then I just went out. I put my fins on and started swimming and it was far. I made it out to him really fast because the wind was blowing me towards him and he was making an effort to go in, obviously, because he was scared. So he was kind of staying stagnant while I was swimming out and getting pushed out by the wind. So I got to him and he was just so thankful that there was a person there. Like it was really helpful to have someone who was cooperative and didn't second guess for 1 second. Like, oh, this is like a young girl who's coming to help me. Like he was just like, I kind of used like the confidence thing again as like, if I talk to this guy, like I know what I'm doing, which I felt like I did. And I was like, then he'll take me seriously and this will go well. So I just kind of did everything that we know we've been taught to do. And he had no medical issues or injuries. So I just decided he was on like a 5 4, like a tiny surfboard. And he was probably like 5'8" and a bigger man. So I was like, okay, so we could both get on this surfboard and try and paddle it in. But I didn't want him on me just in case it started, like anything went wrong. We've always been taught to stay away from the victim. So, and the board was small. So I was like, I'm just going to like buoy you up. If you can help me kick, that would be great. And he was not in any like sort of pain or had any major medical thing wrong with him. So I'm like, let's try and keep your board, because if it's out here, no one else is going to get it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. So I kept it on his foot and started just backstroking him in. And I was going, and it was going well, but it was very windy. Like legit, like I was moving slow. And I was telling him, like, I just kept checking in on him. Like it took me at least 10 minutes to get anywhere near the shore. And he was very cooperative, but like definitely starting, like he was nervous. It was a far swim.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just kept swimming, and I felt like we were making pretty good progress. And then one of my friends, Adam, who was surfing, once people kind of started to figure out what was going on, I got probably like 3/4 of the way in. I was pretty tired, but I still felt good. I was like, I got this. And he came over and he's like, hey, Zoe, like, would you want some help? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And so I had him daisy chain his leash to the buoy, and we kind of swam in a V so that we were continuing to go straight and in. And once he started paddling with the board and I was swimming, it helped so much. And we got in fast. And then once we got towards the surfers, I knew almost all of them. So I was like, hey, like to my buddy Chris, I'm like, hey, Chris, will you just take his board? Because I don't want anything that can hurt the victim on him while we are going through the impact zone. And then I told Adam to detach from the buoy so he had nothing tangled. And then I'm just like, hey, Adam, if you just swim next to us and make sure there's no waves coming.
So you're running the show at this point, from what it sounds like.
Yeah, at that point, I was feeling good. I was trying. Like, I feel like it was my first time where I had to run the show. And
yeah, cool.
It was cool. It was a good experience. And Adam just helped me look for set waves. And I think we took a few on the head, and the guy was pretty tired at that point. And then we brought him in, and he thought he could walk on his own, and then just collapsed out of being so tired and probably hypothermic. So
sure.
It was probably good that I got there that fast. And then he actually ended up going in the ambulance, and they checked him out for hypothermia. And I think he was all good, but he was super thankful. And
did you guys get a chance to have a chat, like you and the victim?
Yeah,
I mean, besides obviously swimming in for a while, but
yeah, we talked a little on the swim in, and then after he was in the ambulance, and I got his board back for him and brought it over and put it in one of his buddy's cars, and then we talked, and he was like, "Oh, thank you so much." Like, I was definitely out of my comfort zone, and he was like, "You saved my life," and I was like, "Wow, that's a really cool thing to hear," and definitely the gnarliest rescue I've done so far. So it was really cool.
Nice. And then of course the news is there, right? So then how did that part go?
Yeah, I got out of the water, and it was pretty cool. Like all the firefighters who I was like nervous to go talk to, like were like, "Oh, that was badass. Like that was super sick. Like great job." And so that was cool for me. And then the news is there, and I was like, "Oh, all right." Like I didn't know what news channel or like what I was doing, but they were right at the beach. I guess they got the call and saw the fire trucks there, and I talked to them for a little bit, and it was definitely different. I've never had a rescue. Like I've done a good amount of other rescues, and I know a lot of my friends have done really legit rescues where no one's been there. So it's definitely like this weird thing where you're like, this is cool, but like also I don't want people to think like weird things about this being online when like other things aren't. Like it's a weird thing in lifeguarding, as you know, like when there's press, like all press is pretty good press, I'd say, if it's a good rescue for our profession. But it's definitely weird, like just to be like, oh yeah, I'm on the news for saving someone, which I would have done anyway. Yeah.
And so here's why I like doing the podcast and all this stuff, is because we get a chance to talk about it, right? And like how we were talking about earlier before we started recording, like, and I think anyone listening to this is going to understand your approach to everything. With surfing too, right? People aren't bragging about stuff, but there's a balance there. And you were going to do it regardless, right? So I think the points from what I'm picking up is no one else chose to get out of the water and go help that person.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what differentiates a surfer or a lifeguard.
Yeah.
Right. And so you transitioned from surfer to I'm going to do something for someone else, even though the waves are firing.
Yeah.
And so that thing needs to get promoted because that is you're exemplifying the greater essence. Because this is, I mean, any lifeguard listening to this is going to understand that feeling.
Yes.
Any lifeguard that's done an off-duty rescue, maybe the news is there or not, that's besides the point. What I'm trying to showcase with these conversations is exactly that. And that's what you represent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that our culture, our lifeguard approach is having your pulse point on when you're at home because you want to help your friends. It's having the awareness, even though it's firing, to go, hey, that person needs help.
Yep.
Hey, those firefighters aren't getting in the water either. Nothing against them. It's just a different world, right? Lifeguards and firefighters, we're not running into the burning house, right? So with a buoy and fins.
Yeah.
But that's your zone.
That's us, yeah.
To be able to put those things into the community, those skill sets, those types of people, and have those relationship as lifeguards, that's what needs that good press. That's what needs the explanation because people don't get it, right?
Yeah.
For the firefighters, some random person just showed up with tube and fins and they're like, oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah. They
right?
didn't know who I was. They never met me. They're not the firefighters I normally work with either. Like if it was the engines from Half Moon Bay, I do know those people and they would be like, oh, 100% Zoe, let's go. And these guys were like, they were super thankful I was there and took me seriously because I presented myself in a serious way. But yeah, they definitely like, are you sure? Like, you got it? And I'm like, yeah, I got it. And then they have confidence in you. And even if you're not a lifeguard and you're someone who has confidence that you're a good surfer, like you at least need to know, like, there's a lot of stuff that's more important than surfing. And kind of that's what's helped me as a professional surfer is thinking like some of this other stuff I'm doing is way bigger than surfing. And it helps you kind of put perspective on it. And whoever's surfing out there, like you can always help somebody. Why not? And with
I got a chance to be at one of the BRAG courses as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big wave surfing, when pushed to its limits, becomes very risky. And if you don't have a game plan and a safety approach and that perspective, like what we were just talking about, it's a simple perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, let's talk about what happens if it goes wrong before, and let's have a plan for it. That's lifeguarding, right? That's bringing those things together, right? So I think that's a cool thing to start bringing in. And when someone's in the water just thinking about themselves cutting you off or causing a dangerous situation, we're all in this together, right? We're all trying to enjoy the ocean.
Yep.
But if we open our awareness just a bit, then we can do good things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I definitely think that everyone should just like kind of chill in the lineup, think about how lucky you are to be surfing and that there's some people who've had really sad moments in the ocean. Like just go surf and have fun and be ready to help someone if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kudos to you for having that. And like I said, too, it's not, if anyone says that you're bragging about it, you call me and I'll take care of it. Okay, there's evidence here. Okay.
Yeah.
Cause it's not bragging by any means. And we can choose to, in the face of having lifeguarding is a public thing, right? And media is always going to be attracted to those rescues and those circumstances. However, somehow still people don't understand what we do.
Yeah.
And we just have to represent that in a good way and educate people in a good way. And I think you're exactly doing that, right? Which is why I wanted to have you here and have the chat and everything. Kind of as we're like wrapping up here, anything that I didn't really touch on or stuff you want to say about, everything we've talked about so far, any kind of things that come to mind that maybe you didn't get a chance to bring up?
Just that I feel like more people should try out to be a lifeguard. Yeah, especially in like Half Moon Bay. Like if you're in the Bay Area, like don't be afraid to try out. If you're a good swimmer, like you'll learn so much and you'll be a part of a really cool crew, especially like if there's any other women or girls out there who are interested in it. I feel like sometimes, especially in the like north, like where I live, NorCal is a little bit more like it is male dominated by lifeguards, which is all good. There's a lot more guys that surf as well. So, but I think it's just as easy to be a woman in lifeguarding and you're just as capable. So yeah, girls should try out to be lifeguards in NorCal.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. And I think once again, you're exemplifying that example of it's gnarly, right? There's risks to the profession. There's things that might question your confidence in big waves or rescues or firefighters, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But going past that and being able to push past that, which is like everything, that's kind of like the theme that I've been picking up from your approach to all of this. That's what makes your life worth living, right? And doing these things. Because then after you're on the other side of that, like you said, once I kick out of that wave and I'm in the channel, you have this feeling afterwards that you've done some good or done some positive stuff, right? Yeah,
it's exactly what I get from lifeguarding. I mean, even if it's like a tiny medical helping some little kid who got like a jellyfish sting, I'm just like, oh, I helped the person today. Like, that's cool. It's just something that I really like. And I think that everyone's capable of doing it if they want to, but there are definitely risks, and it is a hard thing to do, to be like, oh, I'm just chilling in a truck, but then someone could be drowning. So you got to be ready at all times. But I love it, and you obviously love it, and it's what we live for. So let's go.
And what would you say then, living through that, as kind of like a closing statement for the subject of girls trying out to life? Because it is, right? It traditionally has been a male dominated profession.
Yeah.
And especially up north where you're working, where there's just gnarly stuff going down. What would be your message to them? Or let's say someone's sitting there not too sure if they're going to try out or not.
Yeah, I say definitely like think about it. Think about how gnarly it is in NorCal and be like, do I think that I can do this? Will I want to go and swim out when it's 15 foot? Like, you do definitely need to think like, do I really want to do this? But don't be nervous because there's no other girls here. Like there's like a couple of us, and we'll help you out if you are a woman. And I'd say just try it. Like, why not? You've got it. There's so many great women swimmers and water women. So yeah, you can do it, and why not try? Like, if you fail, like whatever, it's all good. But I think you won't. So give it a shot.
What about the girls that are pushing the limits in the big wave world or other surfing world that aren't lifeguards? Would you convince them to be lifeguards, even though they already possess this skill set in the surfing or big wave world?
Yeah, what's cool about a lot of the women who are like on that top tier is like a lot of them are incredible just in the water and athletes. I would love for them to be lifeguards. That'd be pretty cool. A couple are EMTs and paramedics, and on like at Jaws, there's this woman named Andrea Muller, and she is a paramedic as well as on like she's like a great rescue like on the jet ski. So she like will rescue people at any time, and so she's kind of someone I really look up to. And yeah, but there should be more than just one. Like there's one girl at Jaws who helps people out. So if more people wanted to be lifeguards, that would be epic, and I think it's a great job, and I have fun doing it.
I think that's it. We got into some good stuff on that.
All right.
Good chat, Zoe.
Thanks. Yeah, that was cool.